Hello, everybody. Been looking forward being here. They have written a very good speech for me, but I think just I will say what I have on my mind and in my heart to you instead. On the plane down here, it was a very good occasion for me to think a little bit about the past, because in 2009, two important events happened. One is that the Oasis split up, and another one was that I was appointed to the board of Eurelectric. So I've been close to this sector, this industry, for a number of years, and on the plane I was sitting thinking a little bit about what the world looked like in 2009 and what it looked like now. At that point, the electricity sector was seen as a huge part of the problem, dependent on fossil fuels, not meeting the climate responsibilities. It was also a period where the fundamental design of the European electricity market was unfolding, but it was not in a stable position. The sector also came out of a situation where the regulation has been based on a national perspective, and now we are moving into a more coherent European framework. And then look at the sector now. I mean, electricity is, if there is one solution to Europe's challenges, electrification must be the one, if I should choose one. So Europe now, we are in a very critical situation. Our strategic autonomy, the competitiveness of the European economy, the need to go away from fossil fuels, not only due to our climate responsibilities, which are still there, it also means that the electricity sector is in the middle now. And you're not in the middle because of the sector in itself, because of course it's important for us to have a strong electricity sector in Europe, but you're there because Europe needs you to be successful in order to deliver the energy services that our citizens and our economy needs. And if you take that and look a bit further ahead, I mean, your task can only grow. So what should Europe then look like by 2040, in my mind? Well, we have to be an economic zone in this world that is very advanced when it comes to electrification, digitalization. In 2040, everything that moves, that has a wheel, the whole transportation sector will direct or indirect be driven by electricity. We will see a shift in many industries going away from black hydrogen into different sorts of decarbonized hydrogen. We will see a Europe that are capable of producing very, very large amount of the energy that Europe needs, giving us strategic autonomy. And hopefully we will see industrial sectors that we don't have now, but they will grow and they will be a huge part of our competitiveness for the future. There will be millions of well-paid jobs. It will be a bright green future that we will look into. I know that that vision and that idea, there might be somebody who has another vision. But since 2009 and up till now, what I see is that the strategic understanding on the role of the electricity sector has just grown and gotten stronger and more clear, which is a very, very good starting point for the presidency that we will take over in, 27 days from now. Looking very much forward to that. And there are, I think, three very important issues that we will have to deal with as the Danish presidency. The biggest one will probably be setting the new climate target for Europe, 2040 target. I think it's well known what the Danish position is, that we will ask for at least 90%. I'm aware that other countries has another view. And as a presidency, you will play with the cards that you've been given, and within a very, very short time frame, we will do our utmost to come into a conclusion on what should be the 2040 target. And I think that everybody in this room are aware that setting that target is, of course, just the beginning of your journey, because what will follow after that will send a clear signal to energy consumers, but also to the members of Eurelectric regarding the future that we are heading towards. So a bold target means that we will have to find ways of getting away from fossil fuels, means that we will have to use electricity, and all decarbonized sources of electricity will be needed. We don't have much time, so we don't need to discuss whether it should be renewables or nuclear or something else, because we need a combination of new technologies. We need different kinds of decarbonized hydrogen, we need storage, we need CCS and so on. So all of the above, the fossil fuels we are going to need. So there will be tremendous opportunities there. So one clear priority for us is to finalize the political discussion on the 2040 target. And we also need that to make sure that Europe can stand united and strong meeting the rest of the world. Because the innovation we need, the investments we need, of course Europe as a market can drive some of that, but we all know that cost will come down if it's true global efforts that are leading us in the same direction. So it's important for us, for many reasons. Beyond the obvious, that we have a common responsibility for meeting our climate obligation. On the energy side, we will pursue a successful outcome of the Freedom Bill. The Freedom Bill is the way forward to get rid of our dependency on imported Russian fuels. That will also be very high on our priority, and one thing is to say what you don't like and what you will not buy anymore. But we need energy, so therefore, besides the freedom project that lies within getting rid of Russian fuel, we will focus a lot of on the infrastructure, the grid package that the Commission will bring forward, because getting out of fossil fuels, needing electricity, it also follows that we need much more investments in infrastructure. It's not only a question of making the business case clear, making sure that it is attractive to invest in. That is one part. The difficult discussion on cost sharing, because now these cross-border investments are not, we cannot only handle them bilateral between two countries or between two TSOs, because cost and benefits are not evenly shared, and cost can appear one place where benefits are in another that goes beyond what can be handled between two parties. So we need a common European approach. We need that on planning. And I also see huge difficulties when it comes to the whole approval process. It has become too complex, too slow. And I'm very happy that the new commissioner has stated, I think Ditte, he said that it would be 75% faster to build something. And at least that's how I heard it. So I will state that, and I hope that he will deliver on that. But because we have to find a new balance if we want to bring Europe into a situation where we can compete. And competing means that we have to be a zone where the cost of electricity on a global level has to be attractive. And to get us into that situation, we must build more infrastructure. We must invest in new ways of producing electricity. And therefore we need a new balance between other reasonable asks that they are out there, but something is more important than other. So to conclude, for me, the next 6 months we will do our utmost to give you a clear signal on what sort of Europe would we like for 2040, what sort of demands will come out of that for the energy sector and for this crowd. It's an ocean of opportunities. We will focus on the short term to make sure that Europe can stay free, get rid of our dependency on imported fuels from Russia, and then advance as much as we can the discussion on the grid package, and then hopefully by the end of our term, we can also open a discussion on the electrification strategy that will follow. I don't expect that I think this will be the starting point of the discussion on the electrification strategy and not the finalization of it, but I hope that we, by December, can open that discussion, and your input are most needed, so I hope that Eurelectric will stay active as a dialogue partner, because your input is very much needed. Thank you for the word. Oh, I've remembered to say I forgot to say one thing. Because the Oasis joke, somebody might misunderstand it, because I know that they are going to play in Wembley this year. And I'm not applying to get back in the board of Eurelectric, so don't misunderstand it. I'm perfectly happy with the job I have. Thank you very much.
I was going to ask you, did you get tickets? We would be absolutely delighted if you would like to join our panel.
Sure.
Fabulous. Would you?
Thank you.
Come and take a seat, because everything that you've just talked about, if you're happy to, we'd love to have you in on this conversation. So thank you. What we're also going to do is bring up CEOs from across Europe and also from DG Ener as well. So let's bring up, first of all, very pleased to have the CEO of Statkraft. Please welcome Birgitte Ringstad Vartdal. Come and join us. Hi. Hello. Hi. Come and take a seat. We have the Vice President of Eurelectric, Chairman and CEO of the PPC Group, Georgios Stassis. Georgios, come and join us. Hi, Georgios. Thank you so much. Thank you. We have the CEO of Uniper SE, Michael Lewis. Come and join us, Michael. Hiya, good to see you. Thank you. And we also have the Director General for Energy at the European Commission, Ditte, Jørgensen. Ditte, come and join us. There you are. Good to see you, Ditte. Thank you so much. And I know you've been so busy with so many meetings, so it's great to have everyone here. Thank you. Thank you very much. And also welcome to our extra panelist, who very kindly has joined us as well. So good to have you all here. What we thought we would do is take you through some of the key themes of the last couple of days, the big themes that are impacting the industry and everything else that goes around it. And I'm going to try and get through as many themes as possible, if that's all right, and we'll touch on as much as we can. Let's start with, I'm going to start with this one because it was Marcus's priority, and that was industrial competitiveness. This is where the energy industry really does need to play its part now. We've heard about the bottlenecks, all sorts of different challenges. So let me just come down the panel. What is your view of where you would sit to help European competitiveness? What do you do? What can you do more of? How do you play your part? Michael, you've picked up a microphone. Go for it.
I thought you were looking at me for an answer.
I was, but you also seem to volunteer yourself.
Okay. I mean, I think the question of European competitiveness is absolutely critical. And if we're honest with ourselves, the triangle, the trilemma of cost, environment, and the question of affordability, those questions have perhaps become a bit out of balance. And so we need to focus again on reducing cost to consumers. And what we're doing as Uniper, we have a comprehensive strategy for decarbonisation, but we're looking at how we can do it in the most cost-efficient way. And for Germany right now, the most important thing is flexible generation capacity. We're seeing power prices spike before Christmas, over 900 euros. That's because there isn't enough flexible capacity for the so-called Dunkelflaute. So flexible capacity is key, and bringing down gas prices is key. It's still setting the marginal price of electricity. If we don't get the gas price down, we don't get the electricity price down, and we can't electrify as efficiently as we would like to.
Yeah. Georgios.
Well, Hello from me as well. Thank you for having me. Of course, I couldn't agree more. As an industry, I mean, the faster we decarbonize, it has been proven that it is improving also our economics, and therefore we are becoming more competitive as a market and also competitive for our users. So, and also from our side, as we are deploying more and more renewables, we see this happening. And digital is important as well, is becoming more important. AI and digital are married, I would say, right now, because of the system that we are creating, which is interrelated. So flexibility and how we use this and real data from the customers is very important. So we need to treat digitalization and AI equally close to the energy transformation, as well as we need market stability. So we welcome very much the clean industrial package, very much. It's in the right direction. It has the clear look for the future of Europe to be competitive, resilient, and clean. But in parallel, we need a market stability in order to be able to attract more investments and go faster.
Yeah, and you've got nods right the way along the panel at that. Birgitte, so from your point of view, Europe's largest producer of renewable energy, when you look at your relationship with the industrial sector and you look at European competitiveness, what goes through your mind? What can you do and how do you feel you're helping?
So Statkraft has a large hydropower portfolio with a lot of flexibility in it, and the Norwegian electricity market is fully renewable and also has a very high reliability. We take the competence managing weather-based systems that we've done over 130 years, also out to Europe. We invest all our capital into renewable projects, so solar and wind, also a lot more in batteries. We are providing stability services to the UK, to the grid, rotating stabilizer, etc., supporting this renewable transition. So that is kind of one part of driving down cost. The gas prices is setting the price, but it will set the price in fewer and fewer hours the more renewable we get to the system. So that is one element. The second element is that we are working very closely with industrial customers across Europe, providing contracts so they have stability. We support developer of renewable assets with contracts so that they can do the investments. And we support the industry with contracts. So kind of being the market integrator is also key in terms of supporting industry.
Yeah, and just out of interest, what sort of score would you give yourself on how well you are supporting industry? So it's a really difficult one, I know, but I'll come back to you in a moment, Michael, as well, actually. You know, if you are looking at yourself as a company and what you are doing, it's great that you can all sit here and say, yep, we are supporting. How well do you think you're doing it?
Well, we are the largest provider of contracts to industry in Norway. Norway has a large, high power-intensive industry. We are the third largest provider of contracts across Europe. So I think we are a good partner. The industry always wants lower prices, but there has to be a balance where we as producers get a decent return, but the industry also need a price that they are able to invest on. So to find that balance is critical.
Michael, just really quick word.
No, I just wanted to say is one of the key things we're doing is looking to secure long-term gas supplies to Europe, because that's critical for industry. At the moment, Europe has to buy a large amount of gas on the spot markets since we have massively reduced Russian gas. So that means we need to rebuild a long-term security, but also making sure we have enough gas, but not too much, so that we are well positioned to adapt for the electrification and indeed decarbonisation. So it's a fine line, but that's what we're doing for industry, and also giving them the ability to buy long-term electricity contracts, so we can insulate them from volatile prices, and we can manage that risk better than our industrial customers can.
You've cite yourselves beautifully, because we have that end of the table with sort of the energy sector. We have this end looking more politically. So Lars, let me come to you now. I mean, when you look at, I mean, I know you touched on this in your keynote, but when you look at that relationship between the energy industry and what it can do for European competitiveness, where do you see a bit more of a push needed, maybe?
I wouldn't use the wording push. I think we're in this together. So for me, development in the energy sector and what we need to do politically, for me, has always been a teamwork. So input from industry is needed and asked for the political level is fine. But of course, we can also have asked for to the industry. So we are going into a territory that we have never been in. We will see a new combination of ways of producing electricity. We will see different kinds of storage technologies that has not been there in the past. We will need to use electricity in sectors where we have never done it. So all this calls for bold investment, risk-taking from the private side, but I also recognize that the private side that should ask us to give you long-term predictability. So therefore, for example, the decisions that we have made meeting the Fit for 55 package, for me, should stay. I know they can be difficult for some in the short term, but they are giving the long-term investment signal for the industry. And then I have been in politics long enough that I know that the interests organized around the existing system and the existing business model are always much stronger compared to the ones that there will be there for the future. So you should listen to industry with some criticism or some skepticism always. So don't just copy what I said. But the partnership here should then be to help the industry develop into the future. And besides what has been mentioned, I mean, we can do, and here I think the fundamental approach should be European. I mean, we are still not completed in integrating the European market. We don't use the existing infrastructure to the extent that we should and could. Do we have the price zones that would be reasonable to have in Europe, or don't we? So I think there's a lot of issues where we could help the industry, help ourselves, and it has to be, in my mind, more integrated, more European decisions. And then we will, as I mentioned in my previous intervention, I mean, speed is an issue here. So clarity on building infrastructure, approval processes, and all that follows is something that we really need to focus on politically, because otherwise we will not get into the future rapidly enough. And my fear is that you will then see other regions, for example China, that would be way ahead of us going into the electric world. And they probably do it for many reasons, but I trust them enough to know that they do it for the money involved and their future competitiveness. And I mean, my fear is that if we could lag behind if we are not bold enough on these.
And you're getting nods from your fellow panelists about that fear of lagging behind. Ditte, right? Okay. The fear of lagging behind. I mean, on your shoulders now. How can you support what the industry is saying that they need, and also push the industry in the right direction?
Thank you very much. I think, first of all, let's leave the fear aside. It's not going to help. It will take attention away from what needs to be done. I think all the relevant points have been made by my fellow panelists already. Our job as a European Commission is to help make sure that Europe has the best possible framework to facilitate that, to facilitate the investments, to accelerate the permitting and the build-out, to make sure we have the instruments that we need. And so just a few words on those and on what we're working on. First of all, I agree with those who said electrification. I think you started your intervention with that, Minister. Electrification will have to be a driver. It's a driver of decarbonization. It's a driver of competitiveness. It is a driver of security, because that is how the European energy system looks like. We are not rich in molecules naturally, and so we need to rid ourselves of that dependence. So electrification, facilitating electrification, which is why we're coming out with an electrification action plan later, but also why we, for example, in the review of the state aid guidelines, look at what can we do to facilitate the investments into electrification by industry that is needed. There's quite a lot of de-risking that can be done by having a stable regulatory framework, by that predictability, stability, knowing what prices and markets are like. And then sometimes there's going to be more help needed for those investments. And of course, we need to make sure the framework is there for that. So electrification and everything around that. The second point is we know that the common European electricity market is a huge value to all of us. We sometimes forget it when prices are high, but we can see that we have saved billions over the last decades in having that common electricity market. We can also see that the certainty that the market is there, the market operates, that wholesale prices are set by market, that certainty and predictability is a very strong incentive for investments. So we need to make sure that that market is there, that it is not put into question, but also, of course, that it functions as well as possible. So we are working on all the many actions to implement the electricity market design. We are working on all the aspects on the software, if you will, as well as, of course, the hardware, the infrastructure, the stepping up investments, accelerating the rollout of infrastructure, and reducing the permitting times. We will do what we can to reduce it indeed by 75%, but I think it's important to know that it will be national and local authorities that will have to make those 75% a reality. We give the framework, but it has to be implemented out there by authorities and by companies. The third point I wanted to make, and that picks up on something Michael also said, is we are still going to need molecules and fossil molecules in our system for the coming decades. It is a reality. The demand is hopefully going to be reduced and as fast as much as possible, but there is a demand. We have to be careful we don't have too much, but we also have to be careful we don't have too little, because that will increase pressure on prices. So making sure that we have security of supply, that we have diversified supply routes and supply chains is a necessary part of that competitiveness challenge that we have ahead of us. For that, we're working very, very closely with alternative suppliers. The interesting fact is that we, over the last 3 years, have gone from being a marginal player in global LNG markets to being the single largest importer of LNG globally. So let's see, how do we use that fact that we are actually now a significant player in global LNG markets?
Yeah, let me just turn to you for a moment, because we've started by talking about industrial competitiveness. I just want to run a very, very quick Slido poll just to gauge your reaction. So if we could have the QR code up on screen, please, and if you could get your phones out for me, because we thought we would ask you about the future of European competitiveness. And I know you don't have your phones on you, so the question... Oh, you do. Michael, please feel free. So the question is, how do you feel about the future of European competitiveness? So this is actually the same question that we asked you earlier, a very, very similar question. We're going to ask you from 1 to 10, okay? So 10 is absolutely confident, really, really gung-ho about this, feeling really good. 1 is... well, you probably shouldn't be here. Probably should send you that way quickly. So we're going to ask you from 1 to 10. So 1 is no confidence at all.
Yeah.
Moving up to 10 of being super confident. We've had about, I reckon, 2/3 of the room replying, haven't we? Should we say, but actually, don't show yet. Don't show yet. What do you reckon? 1 to 10.
6.
6?
6.
Yeah, this is such a politician's answer, actually, these ones. When you go just slightly a bit more than half.
I have a reason why. Because I think this sector is moving fast.
Okay.
But we need other sectors as well, especially technology and many others to have European competitiveness.
But where is your level of confidence? You're going to stay at 6?
No, I stay at 6. And
yeah,
I think
okay.
we can improve, but it's not only about this room.
Yeah, that is very, very true. Birgitte, where would you put the number? Confidence?
I had actually thought of 6 before I heard the gentleman's to the right.
It is
But I say 7 then.
7, okay.
But I think it requires quite a bit from all of us, so that's
Okay.
important.
Confidence in European competitiveness.
Well, the question is how I feel about it.
Yeah.
And I feel 10.
Ah.
I want us to...
You've just stolen Diete's answer.
Yeah,
I could tell the way she reacted.
But I mean, it's up for us to decide, recognizing that Europe's role in the world is not as big as it used to be, and it will never get as big as it used to be again. So my hope is that this is not just a zero-sum game. Europe should be secure, competitive, but I would also like to see other parts of the world to grow.
Okay.
So not us instead of them, but my aspiration is that we should strive for 10, and maybe we will then get to a little lower number, but the ambition should be 10.
We'll see in a moment.
I'm a realistic optimist, and I would have said around 8 or 9, because I know that we have it in us. We have the capacity, we have the instruments, we have the possibility to work together to strengthen our competitiveness. I hope industry shares that belief and is ready to do what is needed also on the private side. Thank you.
Let's see what the room said. What did we get? 7. They went a little bit more than 6. But look, still 20% going for that. 2%, 1. So, look, that's a really interesting sort of, yeah. Was that you voting, Lars? Up here at 10. Really interesting one. Thank you. Thank you very much for doing that. There is so much that we could talk about that we've sort of like touched on this week. Let's have a show of hands from the panel. Who wants to talk about societal contracts? Is that your top of your... Oh, no, okay. Yes, yep, okay. Geopolitics? Yeah, well, that's got 2 votes. Skills, how we find the right people. That's a couple of... Oh, that was quite a few, okay. And security, weather. Oh, hello. Yeah, okay. Yeah, all of it. I know. Yeah. I know. It's brilliant. Let's go with security. You went, when I said weather. So you'll have heard everyone talking about different security issues, different challenges. Your thoughts?
I think security is increasing on all our minds, but I think Fortum said it also very well. It's both about physical and digital security as one topic, which is becoming more and more important. And also electrifying the society just shows that it's becoming even more important for us to be dependent on a secure supply. You can sort of, we can probably talk about Spain in other sections as well, but sort of realizing how much you need that electricity, how important the rest of society is depending on electricity, it even increases the bar for us to keep a secure supply even more, right, going forward. So the more you electrify, the more we use our phones, the more
it's everything.
You get helpless without. So physical, making sure that we have a secure supply is of course one element.
Okay, before you go on, can I just? You mentioned Spain. What can be learned? What can you learn?
That is too early to conclude on, and I don't think we should speculate. But I think what you can learn already is to acknowledge how dependent we as a society is on a fully operational electricity system at all given times.
Can we just stay on Spain for a moment? Yeah.
About Spain, of course, we don't know exactly what has happened yet. Fine. But I want to light another angle of that situation. Because yes, there was an incident in Spain which caused a very big trouble indeed. But let us not forget that Spain has adopted renewables earlier than anybody else, or many of the European countries, and they got the benefits of that. I'm talking from the other side of Europe, whereby we delayed to adopt the clean technologies, and we are doing so now. And when we had the energy crisis, we paid a lot for that, because we were much more dependent on gas. So, of course, there was a very bad incident in Spain. There was an impact on the GDP for a day, very important. I'm not underplaying it, but we need to look on the benefits that they enjoyed all these years. Therefore, this is a system that we are going, which will have much more renewables, will be independent from the security point of view because it's our resource. Of course, it will have many other problems, digital issues, how to balance the system, and we will be learning from Spain, all of us in Europe.
Yeah.
From the bad point of view, it is also an opportunity for everybody to learn. But this system will be better for everybody, and I want to underline this.
Michael's nodding at the end there.
Yeah, just a point on security of supply maybe, rather than geopolitical security. I completely agree with that point. The thing about electricity I learned on my first induction week back in 1993 when I started in the electricity industry, I remember being told, electricity is unique, you have to balance it in real time, every second of every day, of every week, of every year. And that means when it fails, it's catastrophic. And we saw that in Spain. So we need to make sure we have resilient grids, resilient generation capacity, and resilient backup capacity. And by the way, this is going to get even more critical. If we're going to electrify 80 to 90% of the economy, we will shut down the entire economy if we have those kind of failures. So it's even more important that we make everything much more resilient going forward. That's in the operational time frame, and in the longer term time frame to build resilience into different kinds of generation and different kinds of short-term storage and different kinds of demand-side response, so we have the flexibility to manage that system.
Just out of interest, I imagine you probably got a news alert on your phone or something when sort of the event started to unfold in Spain. What went through your mind? Was it like, thank goodness that's not me, or?
No.
did you say yes? Yeah.
Well, I must admit, it was a complete. It did get the news a lot. We were actually sitting in a big meeting, and I said, "What the hell's going on in Spain? Does anyone know?" And a couple of our guys were on it, and we had a quick discussion. But obviously, we didn't know then exactly what has happened. We still don't know exactly what has happened. But we're, I think, all chomping at the bit to try and understand and make sure we can build resilience going forward. Yeah. It's really important for public confidence in electrification.
Yeah. Do you want to come in on that, and then I'll turn to you, Ditte.
I said I hope my people are okay. So, but I think it's also important to not conclude too early that it's because of renewable and that we cannot run a renewable system because of this event. And I shall not speculate, but I think UK is the best example of a country that has moved very far and kind of moving from fossil to a renewable system. And as I said earlier, they are purchasing services to stabilize the grid in the market, capacity services and frequency stabilizing services, etc. So it is possible. And grid is super important to reduce the risk and kind of increase sharing the burden, so to say, or sharing the bottlenecks, reducing bottlenecks across. So an integrated system is also the best sort of way to solve and support this issue.
Ditte.
Thank you very much. Again, I agree with everything that both Birgitte, Georgios and Michael have said on grids, flexibility, storage, cross-border interconnectors, all of that digitization, all of those aspects are necessary. Maybe a different angle that we see on this is we've got the security of supply and the need to avoid blackouts. We're reviewing our security of supply framework across the European Union. We'll be making new proposals on that. The other aspect of security of supply is that on the impact on prices. So if you go back to late summer last year, we saw a very large part of Europe, Southeast Europe, suffering from very, very high and volatile prices. I mean, price spikes that had a dramatic impact. It's a different aspect of security, but it is a relevant aspect of security as well, where we're looking at, well, how can we mitigate that? How can we lower the risk of that happening again this summer? There are many different causes for that, and maybe one good point is define the problem before you start identifying the solution. So I'm not going to speak to Spain and Portugal, but what we saw in Greece and neighboring countries last year was due to a combination of circumstances of insufficient flexibility and storage in the domestic system, challenges around hydropower, droughts and changing weather patterns, the impact of climate change on the weather and on hydropower capacity because of that. And then, of course, cross-border interconnectors as well as tradable capacity, further limiting the possibility, the capacity to respond to that. All of those challenges are challenges that we can address and that we must address before we go into another summer and before we get into that risk. So we have set up a rapid response team that works with those parts of Europe, those regions, those countries where we can see those risks being most significant, really to try to identify swift solutions to what are clearly identified challenges and problems. On the international aspects of security of supply, and you said it, Minister, in your opening remarks, we know that the dependence on Russian energy has been the single most significant factor of a threat to our security. We have lowered our dependence very, very significantly. We have a very low share of Russian energy in our system today, but it is still there. So we are working on a legal proposal to follow up on the Commission's roadmap to end any imports of Russian energy, and we'll be presenting legal proposals in a very, very near future, both on gas and nuclear. So that will also be an important contribution, as you referred to, Minister.
Yeah. Do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think it's important for all of us to recognize that that the discussion on security is a very dynamic thing. And the threats to our energy system, to Europe, has changed dramatically within the last few years. So back in the days when Oasis was a band and I joined Eurelectric, who could imagine that we could have a discussion on physical protection of energy installations in Europe? I mean, the biggest threat for us at that time probably was a chainsaw because somebody took down a tree and it destroyed distribution line. But it's a different kind of threats now. Physically, cyber. And so this is really something that everybody, and I know that the sector takes it super seriously, so nothing to complain about. It's just to say that we have to recognize that this is dynamic. So the threats that are coming towards us on the energy side is getting more and more serious, and we haven't seen the end of it. So we need to invest more, and I think consumers, eventually this will also come into the prices. And we need to have a frank discussion with the consumers, both domestic and for industry, that the security of supply also comes with a price, because it is enormous amounts that needs to be invested in both physical, but also, of course, the cyber dimension of this.
Well, let's throw that to the industry. Are you ready for an open conversation? You said with industry and residential customers about the cost implications of security of supply when it comes to physical threats and cyber threats. You ready for that conversation, Michael?
I think so, yes, because in the end, you have to ask what's the cost of not having a resilient system. And we saw that with, when Russia cut the gas off. I mean, the implications of that were catastrophic. And we saw prices rise to levels I never thought we'd see. And we're still living with those consequences. Prices are still not back to where they were before. So absolutely, we have to build in resilience into our infrastructure. We need to build diversity into our sources of energy. If we get all of that right, we actually reduce the cost of energy long term, but there are upfront costs. So the question of how do you pay for it over time? And we are moving towards a much more capital-intensive system, and that means we need to figure out how we finance these in smart ways. That's the key to it all. But yes, ultimately, it makes sense for customers to pay for security because they value it.
Yeah, and you exactly as you say, you've only got to realise how much you value something when it suddenly is not there. Upfront costs, though, and so many times we hear, there is no money, or where does the money come from, or how do you come up with these innovative solutions, which basically is another way of saying trying to get bits from everywhere if you can. How do you do it, Georgios?
Well, just to add a bit on what was said before, because, of course, attributing cost and benefits on those investments to everybody is very important, and we are in a common European energy market, and we really need to reinforce our cross-border interconnections, and we say this again and again. And then you have an issue of permitting, you have an issue of cost and benefits, very important, because the burden of that cost is taken by some countries for the benefit of others or vice versa. And then you have the issue of the existing cross-borders. I mean, what was happening last summer in Southeast Europe, we saw that the existing cross-borders was not used efficiently. And so we need to work in that direction and finding the way to operate them perfect. Now, with regards to financing, of course, and this brings to my mind, again, infrastructure in particular on the grids, where we need to increase very much the spending for everything that we have said, for affordability, for new elements in the distribution grids to be added, for cross-border. And of course, financing is important, and it cannot be only state financing. It needs to be also from the private sector. And for this, we need to have, again, stability. We cannot, how can I say, we cannot have inframarginal caps every other year. This is not helping because the financial community is not entrusting us in order to give us more in a lower cost in order to do this investment. So again, market stability and will reinforce investments, but I think we are in the correct direction.
Birgitte, when you were speaking earlier about money that you were reinvesting, you were saying that you were reinvesting back into infrastructure and the like, but I mean, clearly there has to be a conversation with upfront costs for your own infrastructure, for everything that you are yourselves investing in. So how do you have the price conversation with your customers? Or is it a conversation that you feel you don't need to have? Or?
Well, we invest in different countries based on different market structures, so to say. Some places we take investment based on just going merchant in the electricity market. Other places we do contracts with customers, and other places we do CFDs with governments, sort of supporting projects. And we're finding sort of the best route to market combined with the opportunity. And this works very well for mature technologies. Then we see where is the dilemma at the moment is where it's a not mature technology. Costs have risen massively over time. We have not been able to get the learning effects that we want, so things are being pushed out. And there is a dilemma because who is the first one to invest in something that is not profitable? And here it is very helpful also when the EU and governments are bringing some support to get something sort of getting started. We see it on hydrogen, we see it on offshore wind. And that is not easy to go merchant on a hydrogen project with no customers. No one is doing that. So then you need to build the value chain. You need to build the customer need. You need to kind of develop the project. But still, we've taken the hard decision now to stop developing new hydrogen projects. We had an excellent project in Norway with industry, excellent project, but costs were just rising massively. We were not able to find support, so then maybe it wasn't as excellent as we thought. And then we just have to stop it. So it's really to get to the next phase, we need to get over the hurdle on these less mature technologies. But on the mature ones, it's going extremely fast. I mean, wind surpassed gas-fired in 2023 in EU. Solar surpassed coal in 2024. Just the speed now of implementation is really, really high.
And this is private capital as well.
Sorry?
Private capital.
It's we are owned by the government in a way, but it is private capital. Yeah. We do a lot of transaction with investors on our projects as well.
The reason I asked is because there was a conversation yesterday about where the money is going to come from when you look at private money, private investment, where that's going to come from and where the biggest competitor is for the industry sector. And actually the one that was mentioned was data centers. A lot of private investors putting their money into data centers. Are you finding that you are really having to compete for that money, or have you got enough willing partners?
I think it depends on the projects that we are developing. So it's if you have a good project with a contract, and here contracts are important, so a secure cash flow. it's quite easy to find investors that are willing to buy these projects, for instance. But if you have a less mature early stage, the appetite is less right now. But 2 years ago, the willingness to pay for like platforms and pipelines were much, much bigger. So this is more kind of changing over time, I would say, with the market. But secure cash flows are important now to find the investors.
Lars.
Yeah, I mean, it's. I don't think it's either or, because we are going to change we have to change within a time frame of 15 to 20 years the total energy system, both on how we produce, distribute, and how we consume energy. We have spent like 130 years optimizing the fossil-based economy, and now we have to develop something new. So for me, it's a question on. I don't like subsidies, but I accept the fact that there has to be some government involvement on European and national level in de-risking, because otherwise the cost of capital will be so big that some of these projects that we would like to see will be too expensive. And by de-risking, it doesn't mean that risks disappear. It just means that the public side takes a larger chunk of the risk. So that was the reason why, I mean, we had a tender in Denmark where it was without any subsidies. Market could not deliver on that, regardless of what they promised us a few years ago. They couldn't, and now we have decided now to make a CFD with the government support to that. It's not because we like it, but if we want the transition to go as fast as we want, I think that this is a place where we need a partnership, and we could call it subsidy. In my mind, it's also about de-risking the private investment, and it doesn't mean that the private sector will not take any risks, and it doesn't mean that all the capital will be public, but the public side can help in de-risking, so the cost of capital goes down, meaning that the projects will easily be investable for the private sector. So true partnership here is needed.
Yeah.
Thank you. If I may come in briefly on that, because I think it really is an important point, the need for de-risking overall. We see the global context is so much more uncertain and challenging, and that means we have to be even better at home within the European Union to de-risk and create the clarity and predictability. Now, luckily, we are so stable that some people would describe us as boring. I think it's a really good thing in this context. I think that predictability is the first part of de-risking, is that everyone knows that this is the regulatory framework that we operate in. This is the target we have for 2050, 2040, 2030. That is not put into question. That is how the electricity market functions. That is not put into question. So if you invest in Europe, you know what you're investing into. But because the world is so uncertain as it is, we need to see what more can we do to de-risk from a government perspective. We've got the regulatory perspective. We're adding to that, as set out in the Affordable Energy Action Plan, both a common energy union task force to strengthen that internal market, to strengthen that cooperation, and then tripartite agreements where industry gets more certainty from governments in terms of planning, not just numbers, but precise planning, so that the project developers, you, know what is the context within which you invest, and the offtake, the industry side, knows what is going to come online. If they invest in electricity and electrification, will it be there and at what cost? So I think that tripartite structure, that much closer cooperation and clear planning, is a significant factor in de-risking. And then there will still be some risk, and how do we then look at that in terms of guarantee or state aid or other forms? But that part can be reduced quite significantly if we get all the other components right.
I have to say, the person who said that the main competitor for private finance that you would have is possibly data centers, also said, and this was on one of the breakout sessions yesterday, also said that actually there's a golden opportunity at the moment, because if the world is a little bit uncertain in some countries for international investors, actually they quite like the European model there. Final thought from all of you. I'd just like you to pick out something that's resonated with you that someone else has said. So maybe on this panel, or that you have heard while sitting in the room, because I know you've been listening into different sessions. So something that you will be taking away with you, either from what you've just heard or indeed any conversations that you've had. Ditte, I'll start with you.
Well, I think electrification will be the buzzword, and that combined with the market. We need that energy union, we need that common market to function. That is where we have our strength, so let's build on that.
Yeah. Something that someone else has said that you will take away with you?
Not what someone said, but thinking back to 2009 and the gender balance in the panel that were at that time and in the crowd, something has happened, and I think that's a promise that the future will be even better than the past.
I'm so wondering whether you're going to rock up at any gigs this year. Birgitte.
Yeah, so one concern for me is that when we now face the challenges, we forget that what we really have to work on is the climate change, and that by not doing something, the cost may become much bigger. And therefore, I'm actually considering to up my vote to 8 after hearing the minister saying how hard he will work on the climate targets.
Thank you.
Georgios.
Well, I think grabbing on what you said about AI and digitalization, of course, they will impact very much our sector. And we need to embrace this revolution. But on the other hand, it cannot happen without us providing the power as an industry. So I think we should be working hand to hand. And we need to look the marrying, let me say, of the digital world and the energy world very, very seriously.
Michael.
Yeah, it was actually something somebody said yesterday morning at breakfast. I can't remember who it was. But they said, we've got to get away from this idea that we will only build grids when we know there's a definite requirement and start to anticipate. And the analogy he gave was after the war, Europe built its road network, autobahns. Hardly anyone had a car, but it was built in anticipation and it laid the foundations for decades of growth. We need to do the same with our electricity grids. We cannot just wait. We've got to anticipate and be much smarter and quicker in building them. You build them and the demand will come.
You build it and demand will come. Thank you so much. It's been really good to hear your different views and your thoughts. Thank you. Thank you.